He tossed a crumpled wad of cash onto the wet pavement and slammed the car door. The engine roared, tires screeching against the asphalt, leaving Maya standing alone beneath the freezing Manhattan rain. It was midnight on her 27th birthday. Her heels were soaked, her mascara was running down her cheeks, and the red taillights of Julian's sedan faded into the thick New York fog. To see how a girl who gave her everything ended up abandoned on a dark street, we have to go back to where it all began. 9 hours earlier, the bright fluorescent lights of the fast fashion store in Queens hummed loudly. Maya stood behind the checkout counter, her ankles throbbing inside worn-out flats. The sharp scent of synthetic fabrics and cheap perfume filled the air, mixed with the endless chatter of impatient shoppers. Next in line, Maya said, forcing a soft, welcoming smile despite her burning fatigue. For 8 long hours every day, she folded piles of clothes, scanned tags, and listened to frustrated complaints. Yet, she never lost her gentle tone. When her shift ended at 6, Maya did not rest. She pulled on a thick wool coat and took the subway straight to Harlem. At the corner of 125th Street, the warm, rich scent of baked cinnamon, toasted butter, and caramelized apples drifted through the cold evening air. Mama Nora's food truck, a painted vintage van, was surrounded by a small crowd. "Maya, hand me those pastry boxes, sweetheart," Mama Nora called out, her face glowing behind the steam of the fryer. Maya wiped the counter, boxed the warm apple pies, and greeted the neighborhood regulars with a bright smile. This food truck had funded Maya's college education. She had paid the rent after her father passed away. To Maya, the smell of toasted sugar was the smell of home and survival. At 7 o'clock, a sleek black town car pulled up near the curb. A tall man in a tailored charcoal suit stepped out. Jonathan Vance, a prominent real estate developer, walked up to the window. His face carried the quiet weight of a man who had carried deep grief for 10 years since losing his wife. "Good evening, Mama Nora," Jonathan said softly. His deep voice was calm and grounded. "The usual, please." "1 fresh apple pie for Mr. Vance," Mama Nora smiled, handing over the warm box. Jonathan took a bite. The buttery crust and rich cinnamon filled his senses, bringing a brief moment of peace to his exhausting workday. As he stood there, a sudden downpour hit the street. Heavy drops rattled against the metal roof of the truck. Near the sidewalk, an elderly woman huddled under a thin plastic bag, shivering in the cold wind. Without a second thought, Maya grabbed her own large umbrella, walked into the pouring rain, and held it over the woman, guiding her safely to the subway entrance. She returned drenched, her hair clinging to her cheeks, yet her eyes beamed with pure warmth. Jonathan watched her quietly from his car. In a city driven by greed and noise, he noted the rare grace of a girl who gave away her warmth without asking for anything in return. An hour later, Maya stood in a luxury restaurant in Midtown. The air smelled of expensive wine and seared steak. Julian sat across from her, his crisp white shirt and gold watch gleaming under the chandelier. He was a financial analyst at a mid-tier Wall Street firm, desperately trying to project an image of high society. "Maya, sit up straight," Julian whispered harshly, leaning across the table. His voice was cold, stripped of any tenderness. "Look at the way you hold your fork. My colleagues are sitting 2 tables away." Maya swallowed the lump in her throat. "I'm sorry, Julian. I've been on my feet all day at the store." Julian sneered, swirling his wine glass. "That's your problem. You settle for little things. You work a dead-end retail job, and at night you smell like frying oil from your mother's street truck. It's embarrassing." Maya stared down at her plate. The sharp words stung deeper than her aching feet. Every time they were together, Julian subtly eroded her confidence, making her feel small, invisible, and lucky to even be in his presence. Before Maya could speak, Julian's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and a smirk played on his lips. It was a text from his wealthy friends inviting him to a weekend party in Miami. "I'm leaving for Miami tonight," Julian said flatly, signaling the waiter for the check. "Tonight?" Maya asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Julian, today is my birthday. You promised we would spend it together." Julian scoffed, tossing a credit card onto the table. "Stop being so dramatic, Maya. It's just another day. My friends booked a private villa. Opportunities like this matter for my career. You can't expect me to sit around Queens just because you're turning 27. They walked out into the freezing rain. Julian unlocked his car, his jaw set in irritation. Maya stood by the passenger door, the cold wind whipping her hair across her face. "Julian, please," Maya said, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. "Why do you always make me feel like I'm a burden in your life?" Julian turned to her, his eyes cold and detached. "Because you are, Maya. You don't fit into my world. You don't have the status, the background, or the ambition. I'm trying to climb the ladder, and you're just dragging me down to the pavement." He reached over, unlocked the passenger door, grabbed her elbow, and pushed her out onto the curb. He tossed a crumpled wad of cash onto the wet pavement and slammed the door. The engine roared, tires screeching against the asphalt, leaving her alone in the dark. Maya stood frozen on the sidewalk. Rain poured over her face, washing away the tears she refused to shed. She looked down at the wet money at her feet, then slowly looked up at the towering skyscrapers of Manhattan. A taxi pulled up 10 minutes later. Maya stepped out in front of her aunt's house. Aunt Hannah opened the door, her eyes widening as she saw Maya dripping wet and shivering. "Maya, what happened to you?" Hannah cried out, wrapping a warm towel around her shoulders. Maya collapsed onto the sofa, her body shaking as the tears finally spilled over. "He dropped me off in the rain, Aunt Hannah. He told me I don't belong in his world. He made me feel like I'm nothing." Aunt Hannah sat beside her, taking Maya's cold, wet hands in her own. Her voice was firm, cutting through the sound of the rain outside. "Listen to me, Maya," Hannah said softly, but forcefully. "A real man uses his hands to lift you up, not his tongue to push you down. You are not a victim of his arrogance. Stop crying for someone who treated your heart like trash. Wipe your face, look in the mirror, and remember who you are." Maya walked slowly into the bathroom. The bright yellow light flickered above the mirror. She stared at her reflection. Her face was pale, her clothes soaked, but behind the exhaustion, a faint spark ignited deep within her eyes. She lifted her hands, reached for the silver couple's ring Julian had given her years ago, and pulled it off her finger. She dropped it into the glass trash can. It hit the bottom with a sharp, final clink. Maya took a deep breath, wiped her face clean, and stood tall. The girl who allowed herself to be hidden in the shadows was gone. The morning sun cut through the blinds of a quiet coffee shop in Midtown. The sharp smell of freshly ground espresso filled the small room. Maya sat at a corner table, her posture straight, and her face calm. Across from her sat Julian. He stirred his black coffee nervously, his eyes shifting around the room. "Maya, let's be reasonable," Julian said, his voice carrying his usual condescending edge. "You overreacted on your birthday. We can move past this." Maya looked at him. She did not feel the usual pit of anxiety in her stomach. The emotional fog had lifted. She pulled a small cardboard box from her bag and set it on the wooden table. Inside lay his apartment key, a silk tie he had left at her home, and a silver watch band. "We are done, Julian," Maya said. Her voice was quiet, even, and firm. Julian blinked in disbelief. A bitter smirk touched his lips. "You're breaking up with me? Over a bad night? Be realistic, Maya. You work a retail job. No one in Wall Street or high society will ever take a girl from a street food truck seriously. I am not breaking up with you over one bad night, Maya replied, her eyes fixed on his. I am leaving because I finally see who you are, and I deserve better. She stood up, walked out the glass door, and stepped onto the sunlit sidewalk. Behind her, Julian sat frozen, his pride stinging in the quiet cafe. Maya took a deep breath of the crisp morning air. For the first time in years, her chest felt light. 2 days later, Maya stood in the glass-walled lobby of Vance Group headquarters in downtown Manhattan. The polished marble floor reflected the bright overhead lights, and the faint scent of lemon wax hung in the air. Jonathan Vance stepped out of the private elevator. He wore a crisp navy suit, his dark eyes warm and focused. "Good morning, Maya," Jonathan said, offering a firm handshake. "Thank you for coming." He led her into a spacious conference room overlooking the East River. On the large mahogany table lay blue architectural blueprints for New York Plaza, a massive commercial property his firm had recently acquired. "I watched you at the store, and I saw how you treat people," Jonathan said, leaning against the table. "You notice details that most managers miss. I want to hire you as a customer experience consultant for New York Plaza. I need someone who understands real people, not just corporate numbers." Maya stared at the blueprints. Her heart raced with a mix of excitement and doubt. "Mr. Vance, I've only worked in retail. I don't have a corporate degree. I don't hire degrees, Maya. I hire a character," Jonathan replied softly. "You have a rare gift for empathy. Don't let your past limit your future." While Maya embraced this new opportunity, dark clouds gathered on the executive floor. Victoria Sterling, the chief operating officer of Vance Group, stood in her corner office. The sharp click of her high heels echoed against the glass as she paced the floor. She had worked beside Jonathan for 7 years, secretly hoping to become the woman in his life. When she discovered Jonathan had hired a retail worker from a Harlem food truck, jealousy burned through her. Victoria pulled up Maya's personal social media pages, printed photos of Maya cleaning her mother's food truck, and leaked them onto the corporate intranet with a harsh title, "From Street Vendor to Executive Office." How did she get here? The next morning, whispering employees filled the hallways. Maya walked past the desks, feeling their cold stares. But she kept her head high and went straight to work. At 2 p.m., Jonathan called an emergency meeting in the main boardroom. The room grew silent as he walked to the head of the table. His jaw was set, his expression icy. "I built this company on integrity," Jonathan announced, his deep voice booming through the silent room. Whoever posted those photos thought they were degrading a colleague. In reality, they revealed their own lack of character. Maya Lin earned her position through merit. This behavior ends today. He turned his gaze directly toward Victoria, whose face turned pale. After the meeting, Jonathan called Victoria into his office and issued a stern, formal written warning. Victoria's hands trembled with rage as she signed the paper. Her obsession and jealousy had consumed her judgment. Desperate to cover up a separate financial fraud she had been committing within the company's accounts, Victoria rushed to her car after work. She threw her leather briefcase onto the passenger seat of her black SUV, her mind racing with panic and hatred. Maya left the office building at 6 p.m. She walked toward the subway station in Queens, her mind focused on her new project. Rain began to fall, slicking the dark pavement. As Maya stepped into the crosswalk, bright yellow headlights cut through the gloom. A heavy engine roared. Victoria's black SUV accelerated around the corner, running a red light. Screech! The heavy bumper struck Maya violently. Her body slammed onto the cold hood, then hit the wet asphalt with a sickening thud. Pain exploded through her left leg. Blood pooled on the dark pavement as the black SUV sped away into the night, its tires spraying dirty rainwater into the air. 20 minutes later, the sharp wail of an ambulance siren cut through the rainy night. Red emergency lights flashed against the glass doors of Queen's General Hospital. Maya lay in the trauma bay, her face pale and damp with cold sweat. The sharp smell of antiseptic and rubbing alcohol filled the room. The emergency doctor examined her x-rays. Her left tibia was shattered into multiple pieces. Mama Nora and Aunt Hannah rushed through the doors, their faces pale with terror. Mama Nora held Maya's cold hand, tears streaming down her face. "The surgery will cost over $100,000, the hospital administrator said quietly outside the room. "And because it is a hit and run, insurance approvals will take weeks." Suddenly, the doors swung open. Julian walked into the waiting room. He looked around the sterile hallway with visible discomfort. "Maya, I heard what happened," Julian said, standing by her bed. His tone lacked any real warmth. "Look, my firm is handling a loan deal for Vance Group. This accident is getting messy. You should accept a small settlement from the city's victim fund and let it go. Don't cause trouble for important people." Maya looked at him through her pain. She saw his cowardice clearly. "Get out, Julian," she whispered. "Get out of my room." Before Julian could answer, a strong hand gripped his shoulder and shoved him back. Jonathan Vance stood in the doorway, his eyes burning with quiet fury. "She told you to leave," Jonathan said, his voice dangerously low. "If you ever step near her again, I will personally ruin your career at Wall Street. Move." Julian backed away, swallowed hard, and fled down the corridor. Jonathan turned to Mama Nora and the doctor. "I am transferring Maya to the private wing at New York Presbyterian immediately. My personal physician will perform the surgery. I will cover every dollar of her medical bills and physical therapy." "Mr. Vance, we cannot accept this," Mama Nora started, her voice shaking. "Mrs. Lynn, your daughter is a valuable part of my team and a good human being," Jonathan said gently. "She will walk again. You have my word." That night, Jonathan called his legal team and a team of retired FBI investigators he kept on retainer. Within 48 hours, they analyzed city traffic cameras, matched the black paint scrapings from Maya's coat, and tracked the GPS data from Victoria's SUV. On Thursday morning, bright sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Vance Group's executive boardroom. The entire board of directors sat around the mahogany table. Victoria Sterling stood at the front of the room, presenting a quarterly financial report. She forced a professional smile, trying to hide her frayed nerves. Suddenly, the double doors clicked open. 4 uniformed NYPD officers walked in, accompanied by 2 federal agents. "Victoria Sterling," the lead detective asked, his voice echoing in the silent room. Victoria frozen, her dry marker dropping onto the carpet. "What is the meaning of this?" "You are under arrest for reckless endangerment, felony hit and run, and attempted destruction of evidence," the detective stated, stepping forward with handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." The cold steel cuffs clicked around Victoria's wrists. The board members gasped in shock. Victoria looked toward Jonathan, her eyes wide with desperation. "Jonathan, please." "I did it for us," she cried out as the officers guided her toward the door. Jonathan stood near the window. His face was unreadable, his eyes cold and steady. He did not say a word as she was led away in shame. Later that afternoon, the sun cast a warm golden light through the private room at New York Presbyterian Hospital. Maya lay in bed, her left leg cast in heavy white plaster. The room smelled of fresh lilies that sat on the windowsill. The door opened softly, and Jonathan walked in. He carried a fresh cup of tea for Mama Nora and set a leather-bound notebook and a sleek silver pen on Maya's bedside table. Maya looked up, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Mr. Vance, I don't know how I will ever repay you for the surgery and for finding the truth." Jonathan pulled up a chair and sat beside her. His voice was calm, warm, and deeply grounded. "You don't owe me anything, Maya," Jonathan said softly. "The doctor said the surgery was a success. Your leg will heal, but the hard work of recovery belongs to you." He tapped the leather notebook with his finger. "I didn't bring you money or promises," Jonathan continued, looking into her eyes with deep respect. "I brought you a blank notebook. The scar on your leg will heal, but your future depends on what you choose to write in this book starting today. No more playing the victim. No more letting small-minded men dictate your worth. You have a long road of physical therapy ahead, but you have the strength to rebuild your life." Maya touched the smooth leather cover of the notebook. She felt the cold metal of the pen in her hand. The pain in her leg was sharp, but the fear in her heart was gone. She looked up at Jonathan, her chin lifted, and nodded. She opened the first page, pressed the pen to the paper, and began to write. The morning sun streamed through the white linen curtains of the quiet rehabilitation clinic. The sharp, clean scent of eucalyptus and rubbing alcohol filled the bright hallway. Maya sat on the edge of the examination table, her hands resting on her lap. She adjusted the straps of her knee brace and took a deep, steady breath. The heavy plaster cast was gone, leaving behind a long, fading pink scar on her left leg. It was a visible mark of where she had been, but it no longer dictated where she was going. "Ready, Maya?" the physical therapist asked, standing a few feet away with open hands. Maya nodded. She pressed her bare feet firmly against the cool wooden floor. The sharp ache in her calf flared up, but she refused to wring her hands or wince. She leaned forward, engaged her core, and pushed herself upward. Her knees trembled, yet she stood upright under her own weight. She took one step forward. The floor creaked softly under her heel. Then another step. No crutches, no wooden cane. Each step was deliberate and measured. Every evening in her small bedroom in Queens, Maya opened the leather-bound notebook Jonathan had given her. She did not write sad entries or dwell on Julian's cruel words. Instead, she built a strict system of self-discipline. She tracked her daily water intake, logged her physical therapy exercises, and created a tight personal budget. Every dollar saved from her disability checks was divided into 3 categories: rent, emergency savings, and education. She cut out all unnecessary expenses, cooking fresh vegetables and brown rice at home with Mama Nora. Her physical recovery went hand in hand with her mental sharpening. Every night at 9 p.m., while the quiet hum of the city filled her room, Maya sat at her desk under the warm glow of a brass lamp. She enrolled in 2 rigorous online professional programs. The first was a certification in fashion supply chain management from the Fashion Institute of Technology. She memorized fabric compositions, studied sustainable sourcing, and analyzed international shipping logistics. The second was an intensive executive course in food and beverage management. Maya did not just read the textbooks. She created detailed flashcards, analyzed financial spreadsheets, and spent hours learning how to turn raw ideas into profitable, sustainable business models. By the start of her second year, Maya was fully walking without a limp. She turned her attention toward her family's roots. Mama Nora's old food truck was iconic in Harlem, but it was limited by its small kitchen and aging engine. Maya sat down with her mother at the kitchen table, laying out colorful brand boards, financial projections, and new menu designs. "Mama, we are going to turn Nora's Bakery into a modern organic brand," Maya said, her eyes shining with quiet authority. Together, they rebranded the business. Maya replaced the old plastic wrappers with biodegradable, eco-friendly packaging. She designed crisp, professional linen aprons stamped with a sleek new logo. She streamlined the kitchen workflow, cutting customer wait times in half while introducing premium organic apple pies and vegan cinnamon pastries. Within 12 months, sales at Nora's Bakery tripled. Local food magazines featured the brand, praising its combination of traditional home-style flavors and modern, sustainable operations. Entering her third year, Maya took her biggest leap forward. Drawing from her years in retail and her recent supply chain degree, she identified a major gap in the market: affordable, high-end, zero-waste apparel for working women. She founded Maya Ecolux. She did not seek handouts. She drafted a 50-page business plan complete with market research, risk analysis, and 5-year financial forecasts. She presented the plan to Jonathan Vance. Jonathan read the document carefully in his sunlit office, his eyes moving across the neat columns of figures. He set the paper down, looking at Maya with immense pride. He agreed to become an angel investor, taking a minor 15% equity stake. He gave her complete creative and operational freedom. "This is your company, Maya," Jonathan said softly, his voice full of warmth and respect. "You built the vision. You run the business." Maya hired local seamstresses, sourced certified organic cotton, and launched an online storefront. Within 2 years, Maya Ecolux expanded rapidly, earning praise for its elegant, structured suits made from recycled materials. Through every milestone, Jonathan remained her steady anchor. They shared long dinners at quiet restaurants, discussing literature, philosophy, and urban architecture. Their bond grew naturally, rooted in deep mutual respect, shared values, and genuine emotional maturity. Jonathan's daughter, Chloe, became one of Maya's closest friends and biggest supporters, often volunteering at Maya Ecolux pop-up events in Soho. Maya sat at a large mahogany desk in her new corporate office in Midtown Manhattan. Sunlight flooded through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow over the hardwood floor. She wore a tailored ivory suit from her own collection. Her hair was swept back neatly, her posture elegant, confident, and tall. On the wall hung a framed certificate of incorporation for Maya Ecolux, bearing her signature at the bottom. Beside her laptop lay the leather notebook from New York Presbyterian Hospital. Its pages were now filled with financial targets, shipping schedules, and retail expansion plans. Maya picked up her pen, opened the notebook, and checked off the final item on her 3-year goals list: secure flagship retail space in Manhattan. She closed the notebook, set down the pen, and folded her hands, her heart filled with absolute clarity and peace. The morning sun streamed through the high glass windows of the executive suite on the 55th floor of Wall Street Tower. The air smelled of polished leather, fresh mahogany, and brewed dark roast coffee. Outside, the New York skyline stretched into the horizon, bright and sharp against the clear blue sky. Maya Lin stood near the glass wall, her posture poised and effortless. She wore a double-breasted ivory blazer from her own collection, crafted from recycled silk and organic cotton. Her dark hair was gathered in a sleek knot at her neck. Around her sat a team of 4 corporate lawyers and 2 senior financial advisors, reviewing thick investment binders. After 3 years of rapid growth, Maya Ecolux was preparing for its national expansion across 20 major cities. The company required an investment banking partner to structure a $50 million credit facility and handle its upcoming initial public offering. "Mrs. Lin, the representatives from Sterling Capital Bank have arrived," her executive assistant announced softly through the intercom. "They are ready for the pitch." "Show them in," Maya replied, her voice calm and steady. The heavy double doors clicked open. 2 men in dark suits walked into the boardroom. Leading the pair, was Julian Vance. He carried a sleek black leather briefcase, his silk tie adjusted tight against his collar. His face was pale, his eyes showing dark shadows from days of intense pressure. Julian's position at Sterling Capital was on the line. After failing to secure key commercial accounts over the past year, his managing director had given him a strict ultimatum: secure the Maya Ecolux account or face immediate termination. Julian kept his eyes on his iPad as he walked toward the head of the conference table. "Good morning. On behalf of Sterling Capital, we are honored to present our expansion strategy for..." Julian stopped dead in his tracks. His sentence cut off midair. He lifted his eyes, and his breath hitched in his throat. His fingers loosened, nearly dropping the tablet onto the polished mahogany table. Sitting at the center of the executive table, framed by the bright morning skyline of Manhattan, was Maya. Julian froze. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The air in his lungs felt trapped. He blinked rapidly, searching her face, expecting to see a shadow of the retail girl who used to cry in the rain. Instead, he met a pair of deep, clear eyes that held not a single trace of anger, fear, or resentment. She sat upright, her hands folded neatly over a leather-bound notebook, radiating authority, self-possession, and absolute composure. "Julian," Maya said softly, nodding once in professional greeting. "Please have a seat." Julian's knees felt weak. He pulled out a leather chair and sat down, his hands trembling as he opened his leather briefcase. The paper sheets rustled loudly in the silent room. Mrs. Lin," Julian stammered, his voice cracking slightly. He wiped a thin bead of cold sweat from his upper lip. I had no idea. When the schedule listed Maya Ecolux, I didn't realize." "We are here to review your financial proposal, Mr. Vance," Maya interrupted gently, her tone completely neutral. "You have 15 minutes. Julian cleared his throat, trying desperately to regain his composure. He stood up, clicked his presentation clicker, and began flipping through financial slides. His voice trembled as he talked about interest rates, capital allocation, and debt restructuring. Every word felt hollow. As he spoke, his mind raced backward in time. He remembered the cold night in Manhattan when he had shoved her onto the wet pavement. He remembered telling her she would never amount to anything, that her mother's street truck was an embarrassment, that she did not belong in high society. Now, he stood before her in the most prestigious boardroom on Wall Street. She held the power to save or destroy his career with a single signature. Maya listened quietly. Her eyes scanned the financial figures on her tablet. She did not scoff. She did not smirk. She did not display a single moment of triumph or malice. When Julian finished, he stood beside the screen, breathing heavily. "Sterling Capital can execute this transaction faster than any other firm on Wall Street, Mrs. Lin. We can begin immediately." Maya set her tablet down. The soft tap echoed in the quiet room. She looked at Julian, her gaze piercing yet entirely serene. "Your interest rate structure is competitive, Mr. Vance," Maya began, her voice crisp and clear. "However, your firm's risk allocation model relies heavily on aggressive short-term debt. Furthermore, your proposal lacks any meaningful commitment to environmental, social, and governance standards." Julian took a step forward, his hands gripping the back of a chair. "We can adjust those terms, Maya. Please, give us a chance. I can personally oversee the portfolio. I will work night and day for you." Maya looked at him for a long moment. She saw the desperation in his eyes, the cracked pride, the frantic need for validation. 3 years ago, his words would have shattered her heart. Today, they moved her no more than the passing breeze outside the window. Maya Ecolux is built on long-term sustainability, integrity, and ethical partnerships, Maya said calmly, "We cannot align ourselves with an institution that prioritizes short-term gain over foundational values. Sterling Capital's proposal is declined." She closed her notebook with a soft, final thud. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Vance. My assistant will show you out." Julian stood frozen as the corporate lawyers began gathering their files. He looked at Maya, his chest tight with an unbearable weight. "Maya, please," Julian whispered, his voice trembling with genuine regret. "Can we talk for just 5 minutes? Private." Maya stood up, smoothing the front of her tailored ivory blazer. She looked him directly in the eyes. "There is nothing left to discuss, Julian," she said softly, her voice filled with profound peace. "I wish you well in your career." Julian swallowed hard. The realization hit him like a physical blow. She did not hate him. She did not seek revenge. She had simply outgrown him so completely that his presence no longer registered in her emotional world. He had lost her forever, not because she was bitter, but because she was free. Julian slowly packed his papers, closed his briefcase, and walked out the double doors, his head hanging low in absolute defeat. Maya walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. She placed her hand against the cool glass, looking down at the bustling streets of New York far below. She took a deep, full breath. The air felt clean and light in her chest. The memory of the wet pavement, the harsh words, and the heavy plaster cast faded into nothingness. She felt no anger, no bitterness, no desire to look back. She had taken full responsibility for her own life, transformed her pain into purpose, and built a future on her own terms. 2 hours later, the warm afternoon sun began its slow descent over the city. In Harlem, on the corner of 125th Street, a brand-new 5,000-square-foot storefront stood proudly under a green awning. The gold lettering on the glass read, "Nora's Organic Bakery and Gourmet Market." Inside, the air was filled with the rich, comforting scents of baked apples, toasted cinnamon, melted butter, and fresh espresso. Bright wooden shelves held rows of artisanal breads, organic pastries, and jars of homemade preserves. Mama Nora stood behind the sleek marble counter, wearing a clean linen apron embroidered with her name. Her face glowed with health and pride as she wrapped a box of warm apple pies for a neighborhood customer. Beside her, Aunt Hannah laughed as she arranged fresh flowers near the dining tables. The front door opened, setting off a soft brass chime. Maya walked in, accompanied by Jonathan and his daughter, Chloe. "Mama," Maya smiled, walking over to wrap her arms around her mother. Mama Nora held her daughter tightly, tears of joy sparkling in her eyes. "Look at this place, Maya. No more cold wind. No more standing in the rain. You earned this, Mama," Maya whispered, kissing her mother's cheek. "It's your time to rest and enjoy." Jonathan smiled warmly, placing a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. Chloe laughed, taking a fresh pastry from the tray. "Come on, everyone," Mama Nora said, wiping her eyes. "The table in the garden is ready." At 6 o'clock, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, Maya and Jonathan walked together through Brooklyn Bridge Park. The sky above New York turned into a canvas of deep gold, warm amber, and soft pink. The iconic Manhattan skyline glistened across the East River, its glass towers reflecting the radiant golden hour light. A gentle evening breeze drifted off the water, carrying the fresh, salty scent of the ocean. Maya slowed her pace, stopping near the wooden railing along the river. She wore a soft cream knit sweater and dark trousers. Her left leg felt strong, solid, and completely painless as she stood on the riverbank. Jonathan stood beside her. He did not speak. He simply stood in comfortable silence, his presence warm, steady, and grounding. Maya turned her head and looked at him. She saw the quiet strength in his eyes, the deep respect he had shown her from the moment they met, and the unwavering belief he had placed in her journey. "What are you thinking about?" Jonathan asked gently, a soft smile touching his lips. Maya turned back toward the river, watching the golden light dance across the ripples of the water. She lifted her chin, taking in the vast, open sky above the city. "I'm thinking about how far we've come," Maya said, her voice rich with calm confidence. "I used to think my life was defined by the things that happened to me. I thought I had to prove my worth to people who couldn't see it." She reached out and took Jonathan's hand, interlacing her fingers with his. "Now I know that my worth was always mine to keep," Maya continued, her smile bright and radiant under the golden sun. "I don't hold any anger toward the past. I'm just grateful for the strength it gave me to stand right here." Jonathan squeezed her hand softly. "You built this life with your own hands, Maya. You earned every bit of this peace." Maya closed her eyes for a moment, letting the warm golden sunlight bathe her face. The sound of the river lapping against the shore, the distant hum of the city, and the steady warmth of the hand holding hers filled her senses. She opened her eyes, looking out over the shimmering river toward the future. She stood tall, free, and proud, a woman who had transformed her own destiny, standing in the golden hour of her brand new life. All shadows must fade before the truth, and every pain is simply the start of a beautiful rebirth. Always remember, the right to write a new chapter of your life is forever in your hands. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below so we know we're walking this journey together. Hope to see you on the next page.